This should be a shorter than normal webinar. I kind of just want to cover some of the changes that we've made over the last month. Some stuff we've covered before, but wasn't in production yet. So there's a few new features that are available in production. And let me just get started by creating a new strategy within this account so I can demo some of those features. So we're just going to create a new webhook for stocks. And once we have that webhook created, you can copy the webhook URL, which can be used with platforms like TradingView, TrendSpider, or some customers use it with custom coded strategies that they write in Python or Go or any other way to basically build a strategy and send a signal to TradersPost via this webhook URL. So once you have that webhook, the next thing you want to do is create a strategy for that webhook. So we'll just call it stock strategy. And we're going to associate it to that stocks webhook that we created previously. And we'll just leave all these fields blank because this isn't going to be a published strategy that will allow other customers to subscribe to. We are going to set some defaults on the strategy so that when a user subscribes to the strategy and connects it to a broker, the subscription for that strategy will default to these values. So we want to trade both sides, meaning both bullish and bearish. If you only wanted to trade one side of the strategy, you could choose bullish or bearish, and none would simply disable the strategy. So let's choose sides both, and let's default the tickers to square. So when a user subscribes to the strategy, it'll automatically populate square as a selected ticker. And we want the asset class for this strategy to be stocks. And let's leave the quantity calculation blank for right now. And let's check use signal quantity and subtract exit quantity from signal quantity, which we'll cover here in a little bit once we create a subscription to this strategy. And let's enter market and exit market. All right, so now we have that strategy created. The next thing you want to do is create a subscription to that strategy that basically connects that strategy to a broker. And this allows you to basically have multiple subscriptions to a strategy. So you could connect that strategy to a paper broker, but then you could also connect it to multiple live brokers. Some real examples of that are if someone has a strategy, but they want to trade it in multiple accounts. Maybe they want to trade it in their cash account, but then they also want to trade it in their IRA. And they also want to trade it in any family member's account. So I've seen customers trade the strategy in their own personal accounts and maybe their son's or daughter's account. And basically every time a signal comes into the system, it'll automatically send the signal to all the subscribers of the strategy, and all of the brokers connected to that strategy will get the same order put into their account. Just the only difference is the quantity and the related configuration would be different depending on what settings you selected when creating that strategy subscription. So in this case, we're basically going to connect it to the TradersPost paper broker. And so now we have this subscription that's created, but it's not enabled yet. So this won't actually do anything. And now you can see that the settings in the subscription defaulted to what we defined in the strategy. Looks like we've had several more people join a little bit late. If anyone has any questions or needs me to recover anything, just put a message in the chat and we'll try to get any questions you have answered. Thanks for joining, guys. All right, so you can see we have square automatically selected because we put square as in the list of default tickers in the strategy. You can see that it's connected to the TradersPost paper broker, and stocks is the asset class. And we're going to use the signal quantity and subtract exit quantity from signal quantity. And entry market and exit market was checked. All right, so I think I just realized I can't actually test this and show you because the market is closed. So let me just duplicate this, except we'll do it for futures this time because the futures markets are still open. So we'll create another new webhook. We'll associate it to futures this time. And let's change SQ to NQ for the NASDAQ futures. So we'll save that futures webhook. And now let's create a new strategy for that webhook. And let's associate it to the futures webhook that we created earlier. We're going to do both sides. We're going to default the tickers to NQ. We're going to choose futures as the asset class this time instead of stocks. We want to use the signal quantity. And what this means is if the signal has a quantity in it, instead of dynamically calculating the quantity using one of these settings, we're basically just going to manually send the quantity in the signal. Now, if this were a strategy that you were sharing for other users to subscribe to, then they would enter in one of these settings so that they can calculate their own quantity that's based on their account size and their risk tolerance. But because this is just a strategy that we're doing for testing, we're just going to use the signal quantity. And the subtract exit quantity flag, that basically allows us to send a full quantity, the quantity to both exit the open position and the quantity to enter the new position. So that's one of the new features that we launched in the last month, and we'll show you exactly how that works in a few minutes. And we'll do enter market and exit market. So now we have that strategy created, and let's create a subscription for it. And let's connect it to our paper broker. And let's change this to auto submit so that whenever we get a signal to that webhook, it's going to auto submit the order to the broker. And let's just check our settings were populated correctly from the defaults in the strategy. Everything looks good. We have NQ, asset classes, futures. These two checkboxes are checked, and entry market and exit market. All right, everything looks good. Let's enable the strategy subscription. So now this strategy subscription is live, and whenever a signal comes into the webhook, it's going to trigger a trade. So just to demonstrate this, I'm actually going to turn off auto submit. And now I'm going to go back over to the webhook, and TradersPost has the ability within a webhook to manually send a request to the webhook. This is useful for just being able to test to make sure that your webhook and your strategy subscription are all wired up correctly. And this is useful when you're testing with TradingView, for example, or TrendSpider. Your strategy may only actually trigger one signal a day. So it's kind of a pain to have to wait for an actual real signal to trigger from your strategy. And this just basically gives you a manual way to trigger that signal, so you don't have to wait for a real signal to come. So we're going to just trigger a buy signal, and we're going to trigger to buy a quantity of 3 or 2 contracts. And we're going to uncheck test. And what that does is if you have test checked, it will not trigger a trade for any of the subscribers to the strategies. And because we actually want to trigger a trade, we're going to uncheck test. And let's send the request and let's see what happens. All right, so a trade was created, and the status is trade created, which means it hasn't been submitted to the broker yet. So you can see also here at the top right, now we have a number 1 in a bubbled red box showing us that we have 1 notification and we have 1 new trade. Let's view that trade. So the market buy for 2 contracts, because that's what we specified in the signal. And that order has not been submitted to the broker yet. That's because I turned off auto submit. And when auto submit is disabled, this basically gives you the opportunity to approve or reject that trade. Some people will use TradersPost in conjunction with an automated trading strategy where they turn off auto submit, but they manually approve or reject each signal. And they kind of combine automated trading with manual trading, and they give that last final human check to make sure it's a trade that they actually want to trade. That's a kind of a not a normal scenario, but it is possible, and some people do like to do that. But most people build automated trading strategies where every signal the strategy produces, they want to take the trade. So they don't sit in between, and that kind of defeats the purpose of having an automated system as well, in my opinion, to introduce random human behavior and decision making. You really want to build a strategy that you back tested, where the back test takes every single trade, and then you wire it up to a paper account, and the paper account should take every single trade that the strategy produces. And that'll give you real results. And it gives you all the benefit of an automated trading strategy, because what's the point if you have to manually review every single trade and introduce that human element into your automated trading strategy? So if you wanted to reject this trade, you could just click the reject button and then confirm. And you'll see now that that trade was rejected by my user. Say you change your mind and you no longer want to reject that trade, you can click retry. And this basically brings the trade back to the state that it was when it was first created. And now you have the ability to click approve. And once you click approve and confirm it, that is actually going to send the order to the broker and try to fill that order. All right, so that order was sent to the broker and it was filled. And you'll see now, if we navigate over to that paper broker, we now have an open NQ position with 2 contracts. And keep in mind, again, this is using a paper account. It's got delayed data. In a normal environment, you would be using like a TradeStation account with live data, and you would see the prices updating in real time. All right, so the features that I wanted to show now, so if I go back to the strategy subscription, let's turn on auto submit. And we have this checkbox here, subtract exit quantity from signal quantity. So when I have that checked, right now I'm long 2, but say I wanted to exit the long position and go short 3 contracts. I can actually send a signal now in this webhook where we sell, and we want the position to be a bearish position after we exit the long. And let's send a quantity of 5. Now, because we're long 2, it's going to use 2 of the 5 quantity to exit the long position, and then it's going to go short 3 contracts. So let's send that request and let's see what happens. So you notice the difference here is that this time the trade is complete. Because we had auto submit enabled, it didn't give us an opportunity to review the trade or make any changes. It automatically sent it to the broker. And you can see now the number 1 has incremented to 2, and we have this trade in our inbox, and it exited the long position, the 2 contracts, and then it went short 3 contracts. So 2 plus 3 equals the quantity of 5 that we sent in our signal. All right, so that is one of the new features that we launched in the last couple of weeks. This is a convenient feature because TradingView strategies will oftentimes be built to where it'll exit the open position and then immediately enter in a new position on the other side. And the TradingView webhook can have a value in this sentiment that tells us, are we exiting the long position and then entering bearish, or are we only exiting the long position and then flattening the position, meaning that we're not going to enter a new position once the current open position is fully exited. So you can see that by, let's go now send another request where we're going to send a buy signal, but instead of sending bullish, we're going to send flat. And this is the equivalent of sending an exit action, where it basically means like we only want to exit the open position. We don't want to exit the open position and then enter a new position on the other side. And the reason why we do this with the combination of an action and the sentiment is that this makes TradersPost compatible with TradingView and how TradingView strategies work out of the box. TradingView strategies don't have an action of exit. They only have an action of buy with a sentiment of flat. And that's basically all the data that TradersPost needs to know that okay, we're currently short and we want to buy to close that short or buy to cover that short position, but we don't want to enter a long position on the other side. So that's why we choose sentiment of flat. And we're not going to enter in a quantity here, and we'll see what happens. All right, so this trade has been completed, and you'll see now we have 3 trades in our inbox, and the most recent trade was a buy, and you'll see now that it exited the full quantity of that short position, and now we're no longer in that short position. So if we go over to that paper broker, you'll see now that we entered long, we exited the long, and then we entered short, and then again we exited we bought to cover that short position, and now we don't have any open position in this paper broker. All right, so that pretty much covers that feature. The next feature was these 2 checkboxes here that basically allow you to more granularly control what you want a strategy to do in regards to whether or not you want to take the bullish or bearish side. So if I have a bullish strategy and I have sides isolated, let's save that, and then we'll let's see that check. So subtract exit quantity. That can only be checked when sides is set to both, but because we're only doing bullish, we have to uncheck that. All right, so that saves successfully. So now, because we have bullish selected and sides isolated checked, let's look at what happens when I'm going to go manually open up a short position on NQ. So let's sell to open, sell short 1 contract. All right, so now I have this short position open, and we have this strategy subscription here that's bullish only. So if I get a signal to this strategy to buy, because there's a bearish position open and sides isolated is checked, this strategy subscription is basically not allowed to exit that bearish position. So I'm going to actually demonstrate what it looks like without this checked first. So I'm going to send, let me do one last thing. I'm going to turn off auto submit again. Oops, wrong one. I'm going to turn off auto submit. And I'm going to send, so I'm short 1 contract. I'm going to send a buy signal. And let's see what happens here. So because I didn't have sides isolated checked, it sees that there's a short position open. So it says, okay, I need to close this short position because I can't enter a long position if there's a short position open. So the first thing that it has to do is exit that position. And as soon as that long or that short position is exited, then it can enter long. So I can actually edit the settings of this individual trade to show you the difference in the behavior. So I'm actually going to, and just to explain how this works, these are the settings for this individual trade. So whenever a trade is created from a signal, we basically copy the settings from the strategy subscription so that changing the settings of a strategy subscription will not change the settings of a trade that hasn't been executed, or maybe a trade that's in the process of being executed. So because this trade hasn't been submitted yet, I have the opportunity to change these settings. So I'm going to check sides isolated and then click save. And now you'll see that it's not going to do anything because there's an open short position and we're not allowed to exit that position because sides are isolated. So if I uncheck that again and click save, now you'll see that we're allowed to exit that short position and we can enter long. So I'm going to just approve this trade now. And you'll see now that we are in a long position. We have an open position on NQ of 1 contract. So now what I'm going to do is go back to our strategy subscription, and I'm going to change this to bearish, but I'm going to change it to check sides isolated, and we're going to turn auto submit back on. All right, so now we have a long position open, but we have a bearish only strategy subscription. So let's send a sell signal to this webhook. And let's see what happens. So this time, the trade was rejected because we have an open long position and this strategy is bearish only. So it's not allowed to close that long position. So let me go just manually close this long position now. And now if I go back over to that trade that was rejected, let's retry it. Okay, so we've retried it, and because we manually closed that long position, the trade plan sees that there's no long position open anymore, so it has the all clear to enter a new short position. So now let's approve that. And now we are in a short position on NQ in this paper broker. That makes sense so far? If anyone has any questions, feel free to just throw them in the chat. Or if there's anything else that you'd like us to cover before the end of the webinar, feel free to throw those questions in the chat and we'll be sure to cover all of the questions. All right, so the last new feature that I'd like to show is disable side swapping. So normally, before this feature existed, when you chose sides equals both, it'll automatically exit the open position and then enter a new position on the other side automatically. Some people, some customers like the ability to granularly control that, where maybe they'll exit the long position and then wait a minute, and then sometime later they'll send another signal to enter a new position, either a bullish position or a bearish position. So they basically want to allow both sides, but they don't want TradersPost to automatically swap sides. So this checkbox just disables that behavior. So let's save this now and double check everything looks good. Let's re-enable subtract exit quantity from signal quantity now that we're taking both sides again. And let's save. So you can't, which makes sense, right? You can't use subtract exit quantity from signal quantity because you're never going to automatically enter a new position on the other side. So this scenario would never actually happen. So that validation is there to make sure that you don't ever have this checked when both is checked and you have disable side swapping checked. So let's save that, and everything looks good. Our bullish and bearish example looks good. And all right, our paper broker still has this short position open. So let's send a buy signal, and it should exit this short position only. So we'll send the buy signal. And it closed that short position. And you'll see now it says the open position will be exited, but we can't enter a new position on the other side because side swapping is disabled. So now, later on, if your TradingView strategy or TrendSpider strategy would have to send yet another buy signal to enter a long position. So let's send another buy signal now, and let's send it for a quantity of 2. All right, so now we are in a long position on NQ with 2 contracts. Now, if we go back to the webhook again, let's send another request. This time, let's send an exit action. Now, this is basically going to have the exact same effect as sending a sell signal because of how we have the strategy subscription configured with side swapping disabled. So let's just send that exit action and see what happens. All right, so that long position was exited. We didn't have to send a quantity in the signal. It knows that there's no quantity in the signal. So it gets the quantity from the open position and sells that full quantity. But just to make sure we see how this works, let's disable, let's uncheck this so that side swapping is now enabled. And let's go take a look at this again. Let's send a webhook signal to buy, and let's buy a quantity of 2. So now we're long 2 contracts. And now let's send a sell signal with a quantity of 6. So this should end up taking a short 4 contracts. Now it didn't. Now why would it not do that? Let's look at the strategy subscription settings. We didn't check this checkbox. So because we didn't have this checked, go back to that trade, you'll see that it exited the full quantity of the position and then entered short 6 contracts. That's because we didn't have that checkbox checked. So now let's do the same thing. Now that we have this checkbox checked, so just to confirm, we are short 6 contracts. So let's send a signal to buy with a quantity of 8. So this will take us long 2 contracts because it'll exit the 6 that are short and then go long the remainder, which should be 2. And there it goes. So now we've exited those 6 contracts, those short contracts, and now we are long 2 contracts. All right, does that make sense so far? Does anyone have any questions? We'll just manually close that long position. For those of you who don't know, you can manually trade in TradersPost. You have all the same capabilities across every broker to manually send orders to the broker. So people will use TradersPost often to get an overview of all of their accounts from within one unified trading interface. So in this example, I only have one paper broker connected here, but I could have my Robinhood account connected. I could have TD Ameritrade, TradeStation, and any other brokers that we support in the future. You would see them all listed here, and you could navigate and view the open positions, the order history, all the details related to that broker connection, all via one unified trading interface. And that pretty much covers everything that I had planned on covering today in this webinar. Again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can email us at support@traderspost.io, or feel free to, let me pull up 1 second. You go to our website, there is a community page in the header, and you can join our Discord chat there as well. And we have customers in there who are engaging with each other and trading ideas, strategy ideas, and TradersPost staff offers support in the Discord community as well. And we also have a coupon code to get 20% off that's still active today for July 4th. And the coupon code is 4th20. If you put that into when you go to checkout at TradersPost, there's a box that you can enter in a coupon code, and that'll get you 20% off. It will work on the yearly plans as well. So if you switch to the yearly plan, you could then apply the 20% coupon to get a total of 35% off. So definitely take advantage of that. That coupon code will be live until the end of today for 4th of July. So definitely take advantage of that. All right, everyone. Well, I appreciate you all joining, and feel free to send me a note in Discord or email if you have any questions. Happy to help you along. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care.